This story has never been taken seriously by my friends or family. Those of us who saw it are certain that this experience is very much real. I was about 8 years old. I was with my two cousins Cassia and Melanie, who were about the same age as me, along with my younger brother Cruz, who was 6. We were having a big family dinner at my house, and we were getting a bit too rowdy, and our parents promptly sent us outside to play. We were all running around and having a fun time, when Cassia said that she heard a growl from the woods just off the side of the house where we were playing. The rest of us thought she was joking, as she could be somewhat of a prankster at times, but she insisted that she wasn't. We tried to continue playing, but we were interrupted when Cruz said he heard the same noise. We all stopped and listened closely. And sure enough, from the woods came a low, guttural snarl that sent shivers down my spine. Melanie suggested that it might be a wolf, and that we should go inside. That's when Cruz said innocently that it wasn't a wolf, because the thing walked on 2 legs. We were all confused, and I asked him how he had known that. He replied by saying that he thought he had seen it before. Just then, we heard another low growl. And when we looked just beyond the tree line, there was a dark humanoid figure. You could see that it was covered in hair, and I remember that its kneecaps had been turned backwards like that of a canine. I know this sounds a bit silly, but the closest thing it looked like was the werewolf of Fever Swamp. It was massive and emitted a putrid smell, similar to a rotting corpse. At that point, Melanie started frantically shoving us towards the house. Cassie and I looked at each other and grabbed Cruz and began running. When we all got to the front door, we started pounding on it, and after a few seconds, my aunt let us in. We all collapsed on the floor, bawling our eyes out, and of course, nobody believed us when we told them what we saw. About 2 days after, a neighbor knocked on our door and warned us to keep our dog inside. When we asked why, he said he thought there was some wild animal in the woods. Turns out 5 of his chickens were found mutilated, and 3 more were missing. There was also severe damage to one of his fence lines, as if something had broken through. He said the teeth marks looked bigger than a canine's, so we should all be very careful. A day later, one of his horses was found dead, with one of its legs ripped off. It's been 11 years since that incident. I think we're all very lucky that thing didn't snatch one of us up that night. This happened one night when I was home alone. My parents had gone to visit my aunt and uncle for the evening. It was your typical slow, quiet night. So the last thing I was expecting was a visitation from something from my nightmares. I've always been sensitive, for lack of a better term, to these types of things. The house was eerily silent, and somehow darker than it normally was. It was almost 10 p.m., and I was watching some YouTube videos and speaking to a friend of mine over Skype. We were just typing to one another and not using the cameras. I had my bedroom door open, so I would be able to hear anything in the house. You can't see much outside my door. Opposite my door is a linen cupboard and a hallway that goes to the left. I leaned back in my chair to stretch and just sat there lazily, when suddenly my skin started crawling. My hair stood on edge and my blood ran cold. As I hinted earlier, I am a clairvoyant. I know how that sounds, but the point is, I am more susceptible to certain things that most people are not aware of. And I could sense that something was close. My eyes were fixed on my computer. I was using my computer's webcam to check around behind me, without physically turning my head. That's when I noticed a dark figure by my doorway. It was near the floor, and it was small, about the size of a toddler. It appeared to be sitting cross-legged and rocking slightly back and forth. Its arms twisted around its torso, and its hands were somehow holding its feet. Its head was doing that horrible fast twitching motion like you see in horror movies like Gothica or Jacob's Ladder. Blackness covered its face except for its mouth. Thinking back to it makes my skin crawl. All I could see in the inky, undulating darkness was a sinister, toothy grin. I took a deep breath to ready myself, and I turned my head to look at it. To my absolute horror, that's what its face actually looked like. Just a moving black shroud, with that toothy grin peering through. Its body was like a void. It was like a black hole had opened up right outside my bedroom. Upon noticing it, it grew larger. Its arms snaked around its body, and it writhed to its feet. I could hear horrific laughter echoing out. It then disappeared into the dark hallway. I scrambled to my door to see where it had gone, but as soon as I exited my room, there was nothing. I remember I was standing dumbfounded at the exact spot where it was originally sitting. I felt unnerved because I had no idea how long it was observing me from my doorway. That icy cold sensation increased in intensity, spreading across my body like a virus. I searched my entire house, but saw no signs of the mysterious being. I've researched into several eyewitness accounts of strange and bizarre sightings of creatures, and I still have no idea what this thing is or what it wanted. Interestingly, my family is surrounded by the paranormal and witchcraft. None of us practice it, but historically we've always been on the receiving end of it. Someone clearly does not like my family. Shortly after my encounter, my mother started having horrible nightmares about being attacked by a dark figure. She explained that in her dreams, a childlike figure would loom over her at night. She would wake up, and the figure would lunge at her and begin to choke her with its icy cold, claw-like hands, all while smiling with a toothy grin. I just so happened to be awake around 3 a.m. on a weeknight. I'm a night owl by nature, but during the week I forced myself to go to sleep early. I kept hearing something down the hall from me, towards the other side of the house near the front door. It sounded like heavy footsteps and a slight scraping noise, like something heavy was being dragged on our hardwood floor, so I got up and went to go investigate. The house was eerily quiet again, and it was dark. I tried the light switches, but nothing came on. I figured that the power may have gone out. I walked towards the area where I was hearing the sound, and just like before, I felt a sharp, freezing chill invade my body. Fuck, it's back, I thought to myself, and I immediately stopped walking and scanned the room I was in. I had entered the living room. In front of me was a sofa, and behind it, I saw this shapeless black mass. I fixed my eyes on it, and suddenly the mass grew in size. It stood up, no longer appearing childlike. This thing was well over 7 feet tall, and its arms were wrapped around it like it was in a harness. I could feel gravity itself coming down on me as the figure stood before me. It suddenly cocked its head backward, and I heard an audible and loud crack. Through the thick darkness, a wide, toothy grin made itself visible. After standing there for what seemed like an eternity, just staring at this thing, it turned and began to walk away. However, its head didn't really follow its body. It kept its locked stare on me as the rest of it slowly walked off, and once again, the bizarre creature vanished into the surrounding shadows. After I collected myself, I checked around the house and spent about 10 minutes waiting to see if it would come back. Thankfully, it didn't. My mother's nightmares have come to a stop. I believe that my gift has attracted something truly unexplainable. Is it an evil or a demonic spirit? Some kind of alien? Your guess is as good as mine, and I'm still left wondering if it will someday return.
About a year ago, I was on my way home from purchasing some groceries on a quiet, dark night. The way back home was fairly normal and nothing of note really happened. When it was time to unload and move everything to the house, I got this weird feeling that is hard to describe. Now, let me explain the way my street is set up. I live on a cul-de-sac in the suburbs. We also live across the train tracks, so it's usually fairly quiet unless the train is passing through and blaring. Because we only have streetlights on the main road, every other road is left to be engulfed in darkness, unfortunately. As I'm offloading my groceries, my garage door is open and is the only light to be seen amongst the dark housing area. Observing the sky around me, I notice a figure walking up the street. It's merely a silhouette from the darkness, and the contrast of the light denies any fine details to be shown. But, for some reason, I felt fear. Whatever this thing is, it was walking on all fours. The thing has skinny and tall, slender legs. It may be seldom, but not surprising to see animals wandering out, as we do live by the woods as well. But I thought it was weird, as I had never seen an animal like that in this area before. The figure was unsettling to see, being alone in the night and all. Still curious, I saw the silhouette's neck move up, and I could tell it also had turned to look at me. Creeped out even more, I was ready to pack up as quick as possible. But then, the freaking thing starts approaching me. I want to say it ran, but I feel like that might be more of an exaggeration. Regardless, I shut off the light and closed my garage as quickly as possible and headed in for the night. I really did not want to meet whatever that freaking creature was. I was only 6 to 7 when this happened, but I remember everything. My mom had gone to work, so I stayed at home with my dad and little brother. My brother was playing with toys in the toy room while my dad and I were taking turns playing plug-and-play controllers. You will likely know what this is if you grew up in the early 2000s. Anyways, my dad had fallen asleep, so I ended up playing by myself. I was playing Mappy, a game about a mouse collecting artifacts and avoiding cats. I was pretty far into it, but my brother came up to me and wouldn't stop bothering me about something cool that he saw, and he wanted me to see it badly. I lost focus and ended up losing, so I said, "Fine, show me this stupid cool thing already." Now, the one thing I left out about the toy room is that my dad had taken the door off and spun it around so that he could lock us in when we were bad. It was a pretty creepy room, mostly because it felt so empty and the light in the room was dim. My brother took me in the room and closed the door. I expected him to show me what he planned, but instead, he just turned around and smiled. I yelled at him over and over to show it to me, but he just kept smiling, and then eventually, the smile turned into a creepy laugh. I got tired of it and tried to leave the room to get back to my games, but it turns out my little brother locked the door. I yelled at him once more, but more aggressive this time. He just kept laughing. I started pounding on the door to wake my dad up. Then, I noticed my little brother had gone quiet. I turned around. He was now sitting on the toy slide we had in there. It was a small slide for babies. Then he looked up, and I did as well. He was looking at the vent on the ceiling. Then, I noticed something slowly starting to poke out. It was white, like paper white, and it was all wrinkly and veiny. If I had to describe it better, I'd say it looked like the forehead of a bald old man, slowly poking out, but the skin was just too white to be human. My eyes started to water and my brother began laughing again, louder than before. I started pounding on the door rapidly and screaming as loud as I could for my dad. I didn't dare look back again, but I heard it. I knew it wasn't human from the horrible sounds I had been making. My brother stopped laughing at that moment. But after that moment of me just pounding and nothing else, my brother let out a scream louder than I had ever heard. Like he was getting tortured. I still couldn't look back though. I was too scared. My crying and begging for the door to open just became louder. My dad then finally opened the door and I burst out. Only then did I look into the room, but there wasn't anything there, just my little brother crying and holding his leg. My dad went to check it out and he had a large deep cut on the side of his leg. I told my dad what happened, but he just gave me a hit in the back of the head for trying to lie, and my little brother, I could have sworn, had smiled at me again. But I didn't look too well if I'm honest. I grew up starting to think it was just a nightmare, like I've been told every time I speak of this memory. And maybe it was, but my brother still has a scar on where I remember he had gotten cut, but I don't know if I believe it anymore.
This experience happened to me this past December. I had just gotten home from working graveyard shift, which is 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. It was around 3:30 by the time I was getting ready for bed. I felt a sudden urge to look out my bedroom window. What I saw was very strange. I saw something on all fours. It didn't look like a deer or a dog. It was moving awkwardly and slowly. At first, I only saw its shape, but when it came under the rays of a dim streetlight, I saw that the thing was a naked humanoid figure, sickly pale, with no hair whatsoever. It picked up speed and disappeared out of sight. I was too tired to really think too much into it. Maybe it was just some homeless drug addict pretending to be a cat or something. I made sure that all my doors and windows were secured, and then I went to bed. I woke up about 2 hours later to a loud bang on my bedroom wall coming from the outside. I got up and glanced out my bedroom window and came face to face with a dark, contorted silhouette. There was no tree branch or platform outside my window, and it was somehow holding itself up. Upon making eye contact with it, it slammed a large, inhuman hand against the glass surface, and I fell back with a thud. I then heard a muffled growl coming from the figure outside. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed the military-grade knife that I kept on my nightstand, and turned back to face my window. It was gone. I went outside and did a perimeter of my home, but there were no signs of the unknown creature. I eventually went back inside and stayed awake for the rest of the night, thinking about what I had witnessed. I still don't know what the hell to make of it, which is why I decided to share my experience here. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories. A big thanks to my buddy Swamp Dweller for helping me out with this video. If you want to hear more creepy stories, go ahead and check out his channel. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you have a story of your own that you want to hear narrated on this channel, be sure to send it to my email at unit522stories@outlook.com. I'm going to be focusing my content on viewer-submitted stories for the time being, so please send them if you got them. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next video. And as always, never forget, there's always